Jordan Peterson talks about the fundamental importance of having narratives to live by. The underlying California, the one we used to live by, is one in which things are fundamentally going in a good direction. Things are fundamentally going towards abundance and prosperity, and that things are fair. There was an underlying outrageous optimism about our future here. But for that to continue, we need more than history and spin. California, with all our beauty and abundance, remains hungry for responsible leadership. Today's reality reflects a fantasy sort of a story, as it seems that those in charge, I often think of them as riding unicorns to work and parking them under rainbows. Because homelessness, crime, appalling results in education, only a third of our 8th graders can read and do math at grade level. Right? And the difficulty of doing business in California tells another story. One only needs to look at the bullshit train to understand how things work here. The initial estimate in 2008 for the train was $33 billion, and I think that's a lot of money. But now it's estimated to be between 88.5 and $127.9 billion. It was supposed to be operational by 2020. Right? Now they're shooting for 2033. So I think it's possible that someone was high when they planned high-speed rail. So we love to talk about solving problems, but there's no evidence that we do. Tonight, we take a look at California square in the eye, and we ask, where are we? How did we get here? And what can be done? We are honored to do this by two people who have approached California from very different directions. One, a native who's been inside the workings of the California legislature, in fact led it, and another who came all the way across the pond, fell in love with California, and is dedicating his career to its betterment. One worked to help David Cameron in the UK as assistant of strategy, the other in Sacramento, and has for decades worked on reforming education. One board in the UK to Hungarian parents, the other had a mother who left school at 6th grade and went on to earn her PhD. What they have in common in some ways is that they both stepped away from their original allegiances, but not at all from their former principles and values learned from their upbringing. Tonight we welcome back Gloria Romero, former State Senate Majority Leader and Professor, and Steve Hilton, host of the Steve Hilton Show, to the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me now? Okay, very good. I won't shout, I promise. Thank you for that amazing introduction, Jane. Wasn't that lovely?
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
It was beautiful. Thank you very much. Just a couple of words, if I may, before the main attraction, which is Gloria. I'm the sort of last-minute addition here, so I know my place, don't worry. I just want to say a couple of things. Where's Dave Johnson? Right here. Okay, Dave. So he's completely right. We need to make this beautiful state that we love so much golden again. That is exactly right. We're going to do that. I'm working on that. But it starts with, that word golden. My organization that I started is called Golden Together, and in honor of that, I do tend to wear this color, but not everyone understands what it is. Where's Sabrina? Lynn? Where's Sabrina? I can't see. There you are. So, I love your yellow shirt, she said. It's not yellow, it's gold. Thank you very much. Let's take, exactly, I know, but thank you very much. I love that you love it. That's the main thing. Of course it is. And then the other thing, she said, I love that you're having a cup of tea, which I did bring up here. And as Jay mentioned, I have ditched my former allegiance. I'm a proud American now, so there you go. But I still have the cup of tea, so there you go. Haley is amazing. I just want to say, I think I may be the only person in the room. Haley, can you stand up, and because I want to honor you again. Campus warrior. But this, I don't know if anyone else was there. I was there. At Mar-a-Lago in the ballroom when Haley was honored. I was there that night, and I'm telling you, don't underestimate what that was. I don't know how many, like 2,000 people. It was the giant ballroom at Mar-a-Lago, the top leaders and donors and supporters of Turning Point USA from across the country, and there were about, 2 or 3 people across the country who were honored with a prize and an award that night, and Haley was one of them. So it was really amazing, really magnificent. We absolutely have a star right here, and just in front of her, Alex. Honestly, I've known Alex for a while. We've met at various things, but I haven't heard you tell your story with such passion before. And what an amazing presentation, and the force of your principles arising from your story and the way you're fighting for that. I found it so inspiring. Thank you, Alex. And then the final thing I said, I will shut up, Gloria, don't worry.
Go for it.
I know, you give someone from TV a mic, they keep talking and talking. But last thing I want to say, I'm sure we may get into the subject of Doge and how we need to Doge California more than any other state. But there's just one thing I want to pick up, and I think Alex will appreciate this as well. I just want to say, Fauci is not someone who should be an exhibit in a museum. He should be a defendant in a trial. That's what Fauci needs to be. And by the way, that is not some hyperbolic assertion. Many of you will remember, I was the first on television to lay out the evidence that it was his reckless research that he commissioned. Didn't just people say, oh, he funded it, his aid. No, he personally commissioned that research, broke the rules that were in place, the Obama administration rules, a new set of rules put in place by the Trump administration. Twice, he broke the rules to push forward his reckless bat coronavirus research that landed us with the pandemic, that killed millions, cost us trillions, will be paying off the debt for generations to come. So yes, no museum for him, but a trial. One day we'll make it happen. Oh, right. Well, I'm glad I got that off my chest. And now, as I say, let's turn to the main event. Gloria, it's wonderful to see you here. You should know that we've been friends for years now. I was greatly honored when Gloria agreed to be on the book, one of the founding advisory board members for my organization, Golden Together, a policy organization focused on, the mission is really to help restore the California dream. Ideas to restore the California dream. That's what we're all about at Golden Together. Gloria is on the board. We've been working together for many years now. And who knows what the future may bring. But I just want to start, Gloria, by asking you that basic question, which I know we all are so fascinated to hear you talk about directly. Why? Why did you leave the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party?
Good question. And let me just say before I answer that question, I remember once upon a time, a long time ago, when I happened to turn on my TV set. It was on a Sunday night. And there was this new show that had been promoted called The Next Revolution. And I thought, I must watch. And so I remember thinking, who is this populist? This little Brit who is coming to America to talk about populism. And so at first I was a bit of a skeptic, I must admit. But over time, over the weeks, I became a believer. And it was so interesting because at that time, I never would have believed that one day we would actually meet, we would talk, we would say whether an immigrant or native born, we were both on the same page when it came to values and principles and optimism, because even in the darkest days and when you're up against the machine, the wall, everything, I think it is important, and that's what I have always seen in Steve. It is belief. Have faith. Keep doing it. And if we don't do it, despite the odds, it just won't get done. So I want to thank you, Steve, because that's from that first initial, who is this guy, to sitting here on this stage with him tonight. It really has been a very wonderful journey. So
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you.
So back to the question, why? It really is, it's a journey. And, they oftentimes say, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And it really is both, because we want to arrive at a place where we can say that we are winning, right, and for the right cause. But it really has been quite a journey. And it was so interesting because in the reception this evening, I did have a number of folks come up to me and say, I did the same thing. Once upon a time, I was a Democrat. So let me just ask for the record, if you were, once upon a time, if I can just ask for a show of hands, yep, there's a lot of us.
Wow, that's amazing.
There's a lot of us. And
That's amazing.
It is. It's quite a number. And it's California. And I think the issue is it's not the D or the R or the I behind our names or the nonpartisan decline to state. At the end of the day, it's not the title. It's not the initials. It really is, again, to what are the beliefs that cause us, like Steve, to cross an ocean to say, I'm going to have a new life. I'm going to have a new dream. And I think we make those journeys and we make those choices. And many times in our life, we might cross and say, I'm going to make a change. For me, if I can say just overall, just in a snapshot, for those who know me, my family were diehard Democrats. My parents were products of the Great Depression. It was FDR. It was JFK. There was a belief in the Great Society. It was very much Bobby Kennedy. It was very much, and again, being in a Latino Catholic home, these were basically the values, the beliefs that we had. But it was a different party back then. And so fast forward, I looked at where I was a diehard Democrat, the majority leader of the California State Senate. I worked to elect Democrats. I worked to defeat Republicans. There were a couple of exceptions. Abel Maldonado. He was running in Santa Barbara. I used to call him Hermanito. John Burton, who you probably have heard, again, to the great leader of the Senate here from the Bay Area, he was arguing with me, get out there and basically get folks to vote for his opponent. Nice person. I just told him, John, nobody is going to beat Hermanito. Come to your senses. So I did stand up across the aisle many times, even as the majority leader, to say, we want common sense. We want people who we can work with. You don't always have to have the same initial after your name. And so that was part of my record. I would work across the aisle. I came from a bipartisan family. Even though my parents were diehard Democrats, half the siblings were Republican. And we all learned to get along as long as we didn't talk politics, especially at Thanksgiving. Eat your turkey, shut up, go home. That was basically the rule. Fast forward, I began to see in the legislature, I was one of those kids that believed in school choice even before we had the label school choice. I came, quite frankly, from, I'm going to be honest, crappy schools. But my mother, with a 6th grade level of education, had a belief. She had a dream that every one of her children, there were 6 of us, would graduate from high school. Because we knew it's education that lifts you out of poverty. It is the promissory note on the great American dream, and that was her dream. And I carried it with me to the legislature because I had been a professor in East Los Angeles, and I saw the kids from local East Side schools who had done everything right, had graduated, got across the freeway to East LA, to Cal State LA, a working class, first generation college, and they couldn't read, and they were in college. And that's what I saw. And so I went to the legislature and began to serve on both the education committees and the prison oversight committees. And that's where I believed if we don't educate, we will incarcerate. So I began to champion and push school choice, turning around failing schools. At that time, it was George Bush and Ted Kennedy. Remember, they worked together. The lion of the Senate with George Bush in bringing about, and a lot of people will complain about No Child Left Behind. I actually believe there was a real good thing of coming together. You bring people from across the aisle to work together. The promise there was accountability. There was a way to reckon, to say, let's go ahead, even with an imperfect score, to look at this, and if you happen to fall in this arena, there was an opportunity to turn around the school. I took that to heart in the legislature and began to write all kinds of laws pertaining to school choice. And at that time, my own party, my own caucus, at times screamed at me. This was back before 2010. telling me basically what kind of a Democrat was I. And I'd sit there like, I'm a Democrat that understands if you have failing schools and kids trapped in failing schools, we will never deliver on the great promissory note, of education in America. So that was my background. Fast forward, I left, blah, blah, blah. I started a couple of charter schools. Some of them have done very well, continue to do that. I led Democrats for Education Reform in California. I even found that Democrats for Education Reform didn't believe in school choice. So I had to argue with my own fellow Democrats who believed in reform. Fast forward again, then I began to see this, Donald Trump. And I was very motivated by school choice. I began to see here is a Republican, a billionaire, who's talking about schools and opportunities for low-income kids, just like I was once upon a time. And nobody in the Democratic Party was doing that. And every time we raised it, the opposition would come out to basically shut us down. I can tell you horror stories about how I was treated by the teachers union in Sacramento. That's for another day, another time, and maybe some bourbon.
I don't know. I think tonight may be a good moment for that.
Well, we'll
Maybe
have to bring out the rum.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah. But it was one where, I kept seeing, et cetera, pushing back, pushing on school choice. And then, of course, we saw the primary. Joe Biden. Bad candidate. I mean, come on. That's who we had. And that was already a rigged primary because we saw Bobby Kennedy locked out, others locked out. And I started raising this, and basically I was told to shut up because I was like a bad Democrat anyway. And then it really got bad when, as bad as Biden was, they threw him out, it was a coup, and installed Kamala Harris in Latin America. And I used to monitor. I did some monitoring of unfair elections in Central America when I was in the legislature, by the way. And that's what they call the dedazo. When they put this out, Latin American dictatorships to say, this is my candidate, you will vote for that person, no choice. The dedazo was used by the Democratic Party to throw out the old guy, bring in Kamala, who couldn't speak. She laughed the whole time. It was horrible. And I just said 14 million votes, even with no choice, that's not a democracy. And I began to grow increasingly upset, but there I was, and then I kept being called to be on these news shows to talk about what was happening. And finally one day I just told the producer, I said, you know what, I'm a Democrat, but I can't stand this party anymore. I think you might want to find a different Democrat. They said, no, that's okay, go ahead, come and tell your story. I had already seen my good friend Leo Terrell, 2.0, leave, and I thought, yes. Then I saw Tulsi Gabbard leave. I thought, yes, because she was treated very badly. But the person that really motivated me was Bobby Kennedy. And when he said, I'm out of here, I'm gone, I remember I called Steve the next day and said, Steve, I cannot stay in the Democratic Party any longer. I am leaving too. I am motivated by Bobby Kennedy, American icon, American hero. I want to be part of, I believe, not even just Democrats, because it could be any of us, all of us who see when we have been wronged and our liberties and our freedoms and our democracies have been taken away. So that's kind of the story. There's a whole lot more, but that's kind of it.
It's a beautiful story. I want to ask you to speak about a couple of things. I want to start with something that I learnt just as we were working on our thoughts for Golden Together on education policy. And this was such a thrill for me. I just want to share this with you. I don't think I've told you this directly. So back in the day, as you heard, I worked for David Cameron when he was Prime Minister. Before he was Prime Minister, strategy, policy, communications, I did basically a whole range of things. And we were very committed to school choice and shaking up the system that was failing. And I remember talking in a meeting about this really interesting new law from America. I think it had been picked up by one of the British newspapers, and they'd written an editorial about it. Said, this is the kind of thing we need here. And the law was called the Parent Trigger Law. And we talked about it in one of our meetings, like we need that here. And it was about, as the name suggests, a trigger so that parents could take control and take some action to shake things up and improve the education that their kids are getting. And we worked on it, and we introduced our own versions, and I was so excited about it, never gave it another thought. And then the other day when we were talking about our plans for what we need to do here in California, the parent trigger law came up, and guess who wrote the parent trigger law? And it was an amazing moment for me. All that, 15 years ago, we had been talking about it back in the UK. So could you just talk about that specific piece of You're a very smart crowd. I think this is a crowd that's interested in policy and ideas. So I think they'd be interested to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you so much. This is one of those laws that I told people, look, I shouldn't have to write a bill to put this into law. It's common sense. And also, at that time, we had federal law based on No Child Left Behind. Under No Child Left Behind, it basically gave 4 options. And it basically said, look, you can, if you found that you were in a low-performing school, chronically low-performing school, and then there were basically remedies, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. So I modeled it after federal law. Well, federal law is available, but nobody would ever use it. Those in power who ran the districts would never pull the trigger to enact change. One of them could be, okay, you fire, you reorganize staff. You basically maybe shut this down and start it up as a magnet. One of the options was you have the parents have the right to create a charter school, which charter schools are public schools in California. They're not private, they're not run by tuition. These are charter, these are independent schools, but they're public. And so that was one of the options. So I was working with some folks in LA, and we said, well, why don't we go ahead, let's run a law. We shouldn't have to do it, but it's Sacramento. Believe it or not, you have to write a law to say, it's Sunday today. Because somehow the message just doesn't get through. There's resistance to anything and everything in Sacramento that makes sense. So we talked about it, and we said, we're going to run this law. It's going to be called the parent trigger. They had a more fancy name. The way that I saw it could happen, though, would you say, we borrowed, and I used to belong to, remember, I would pay my dues as a professor in California. I was a member of all the unions in California, all the teachers' unions, because you have to pay union dues. It's mandatory. But that was very valuable information. And for anybody who doesn't know how to run a campaign, you got to look at the union model. It's been successful for a reason, although you may not want to do the arm twisting at that point. But when you think about it, it's, okay, the parents in Sacramento are basically the only lobby, the only voice, along with kids, who don't have a lobbyist there. There's nobody there lobbying for kids. Public education system does not exist. It's a public works system in California. It's about the adults, how to keep the adults in their jobs. And for full disclosure, I have a pension. I've retired from the California State University system. I think there are ways to do this, but in higher education, to get tenure in the university system, it's a rather arduous process. It's 7 years, and your colleagues are brutal. They will tell you how horrible your research is, that it doesn't matter. Talk about viciousness. And so you really go through 7 years. In K through 12, tenure, job protection, it's basically, on paper, it's 2 years. In reality, it's like 15 months because you have to give the March 15th notice, blah, blah, blah. And basically then, even though it's about job, due process, it's really a job for life. And whether you are a predator in the classroom, you go to the rubber room, they don't fire you, it takes years to fire you. It's not based on meritocracy, it's not based on student outcomes, it's basically if you can breathe, you show up in the classroom. And I mean no disrespect to educators, I'm one. But like in any profession, there are good professors, there are good teachers, and then there are crappy teachers. And I think the rank and file is really disconnected from the executive boards, because a lot of the good teachers say, we want this to be professional. So what we saw then in looking at this law, we said, well, why don't we do it kind of like the union? And we'll go ahead and say, if you get a union of parents at a school that's identified by the government, California had a list, the feds have a list, we could see that. As the education chair, I would see the list being spewed out. Every month, I could have a list of which schools were identified as failing year after year after year. And after a while, I started walking around with these. I did like this little thing, a diploma, and I'd walk around, and people started running away from me like, don't show it to me. I'll vote for your bill, just don't take that thing away from me. Because you have to guilt people at a certain point. But we said, well, why don't we get the parents to say, if they sign a union card, basically this petition your government, if you get 50% plus one, we get to, as parents, make the decision how to turn around the school. That was the parent trigger law. It was fought tooth and nail, but what I did was I cut a deal. At that time, we had Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Had it been Gray Davis, or if it had been Jerry Brown, this would have never passed. One-party rule. You have to participate across the aisle. I knew if I could get this to the desk of a Republican governor, he would sign it. What did I do? I went to the Assembly Minority Leader, who at the time was Kevin McCarthy. And I went to him, and you know what he said? I want to help you. And there can be a lot of criticisms of Kevin, but I will always remember, Kevin McCarthy said, I want to help you. And what that meant was he would give me, round up the votes, every Republican, or as many as would come forward on the Assembly floor. Then I went to the Senate. That was Bob Huff at the time, Senator, Republican leader. He said, Gloria, I want to help you. So I could line up the Republican votes. Then, as a Democrat, I had to go beg, like to get maybe 5 brave Democrats to vote for this bill. And I used shame. And I basically said, 3 of them were Latino, 2 were, I think, were African American. And I said, these are your kids. These are your constituents. Look at the numbers here. When 80% of African American kids cannot read at basic levels of proficiency, vote for this. And so once I could beg a handful of, they had to be brave because they knew the teachers union was going to come after them. And that's what you faced. But we got it to the governor's desk, signed it, the parent trigger law became law. We had it on the books, but then guess what? With COVID and over time, once again, the machine strikes back. What they did was they basically tinker with it. So the law was on the books, but basically they changed the mechanism so you can't use it anymore. And that's what we are up against in Sacramento. You can have a law, you can have a movement, you can do it, and then the empire strikes back by saying, well, we're just going to redefine what the academic performance index means. And golly gee, we're not going to test you anymore. And if we don't test you, there's no score. So we can't say what is a low-performing school. Voila. The parent trigger law basically became inoperative. That's what Sacramento is like. That's what it's like.
But that's what we're going to change.
Yes.
That's what we're going to change. I have to say, thank you, Gloria. That was brilliant. And just as a quick plug, if I may, there is a book coming out in a few weeks' time by me. But there's a chapter in it which Gloria and I worked on together. The book is called Caliphalia. Caliphalia, Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst Run State. I don't think we can argue with that.
And you can do your pre-order now,
yes, exactly.
Right, on Amazon?
Exactly, so we'll do that, and it's exactly. But the second, it goes through all the reasons that this state has been ruined by this one-party rule. But the second part of the book is called Califuture, and that's the plan for how we turn things around. And the chapter on education is basically, Gloria and I worked on it together, it's how we reverse what they've done, bring back the parent trigger law, and much, much more, to actually give our kids what they deserve, which is the best education in America, not the worst, which is what we have now.
Right.
So, as Gloria said, available for pre-order right now. By the way, if everyone in this room pre-orders Caliphalia tonight, I think we'll go up to the top of some Amazon chart or other. And that's going to be fantastic. So if you want to, a lot of you say, well, how can I help you, Steve? Pre-order Califalia. That would be fantastic. So do it tonight when you get home, but pay attention to us right now. I've got one more question for Gloria, and then I think Jay, it's about we got some questions from you. Yeah. So one more for Gloria. I'm torn actually because I do want to hear the stories about the unions. Should we do that? Yeah. Okay. I had one. Well, maybe we'll get to it later about. Let's do the unions. I think that's right. There's energy for the unions. I think it's so interesting for everyone to hear the specific, because you've been there and you've seen it. And we have all these horror stories about Sacramento, and I always say I'm on the road, as I mentioned earlier, pretty much the whole time, and have been for the last 2 years in California, our beautiful state. Everywhere I go, I love it. I get more and more inspired by the places I go and the people I meet and these incredible businesses and, wherever it is, Central Valley, San Diego, everywhere I go, I love it, with one exception. Every time I go to Sacramento, your heart just sinks. There's something about that place. It just drains, and it's always no. It's always you can't do this, you can't do that. I'll give you one little union story, and then I'll hand over to you, Gloria. Which is, for a while I was working on housing policy and how we can get rid of the ridiculous bureaucracy and the lawsuits and all this stuff. And the taxes, by the way, we have the highest housing costs in America. Housing prices are the number one reason people are leaving our state. Until I really dug into it, I had no idea. A huge proportion of the prices is just a straight up tax. They call it impact fees. It's like the typical impact fee for one housing unit in California, $150,000. That's like tax. Insane. So we're working on all this, and also on the lawsuits. The CEQA lawsuits. We all know CEQA and the ridiculous regulations. But the litigation is a huge part of the problem as well, all these things being held up by lawsuits. And most of these lawsuits, environmental lawsuits, are actually filed by the unions. And they're filed by unions in order to use as leverage, to extract, unbelievably, I mean, it reminds me of 1970s Britain before Mrs. Thatcher's trade union reforms. Closed shop, they call it skilled and trained. Only union members allowed to work on a particular project. Incredible. They call it project labor agreements. Union members only, what do they call it? Prevailing wage, which is basically 3 or 4 times what the actual market wage would be, massively increasing the costs, all driven by the unions. Nobody knows this. Anyway, we're in the office of a Democrat legislator, and I was explaining our policy, which was to end all this litigation by ending the private right of action under CEQA, capping impact fees, a whole list of policies. We talked a lot about the litigation, and she said, "You're exactly right. This is a Democrat who's known to be good on housing policy. This is exactly right. This is the right policy." Oh, great. So we can have your support. This is brilliant. Bipartisan. Fantastic. And she said, "No, I can't support it." I said, "Why? You just told me it's the right policy." He said, "Yeah, but the unions won't accept it." I said, "I know. I hear that the whole time. But why? Why doesn't anyone stand up to the unions? I keep hearing the unions. Why doesn't anyone stand up to them?" And I'll never forget it. This was in an office overlooking the Capitol in Sacramento, and they would just wave their arm like that. "Well, they run this place." That's from a Democrat legislator. No, we run this place. We, the people, run this place. That's why we need change in Sacramento. So that's my union story. You've got a lot more, I'm sure.
Here's the irony. I mean, I grew up in a union household. My father worked the railroads, and as a little girl, he actually used to take me to union meetings, and I found it fascinating. So that's the backdrop. I was always very comfortable in the world of labor. But looking back as well, too, the union, as my father used to he was a major influence in my life. We believed in, working people. He would have been, I believe, had he been alive today, he would have been America first. He would have said yes. He would have been at that Republican convention when the Teamsters came. That was a landmark moment. And I am so grateful that Teamsters president spoke, because I believe that he spoke for rank and file across many sectors that understand unions are not inherently bad, but you have this disconnect between the executive boards that are hitched to the parties in power and the rank and file. And probably the most egregious, I believe, in California are the teachers' unions, the California Teachers Association, that have the largest war chest, and they will take you out. They've taken me out once upon a time, but they didn't silence me. And so, we always have to look for that. But let me tell you this story. So that their power is really, it is massive. They will be involved in every budget vote, every organization. When the parent trigger law was finally up for vote, I had to go around. It was late night. I'm scrambling, knocking on doors, trying to get them to say, okay, will you vote? Will you vote? The first question is, where's the union on this? And the union just meant the teachers union. Everybody knew it. Where's the teachers union? Well, they don't support it. Ooh, they didn't even want to be associated with me, because that might be bad for them to be seen in public with me. And at that time, I was being called a right-winger. I was the majority leader, but I was a right-winger because I was believing in parents' the right to turn around a school. But there's one time, this is my favorite of the union stories that I've had, and there's a lot of them. Long before we passed the parent trigger bill, I was trying a bunch of different bills. And one of them was so modest. It was saying, okay, we're going to take just 10 schools. I mean, there are 1,000 school districts in California. There's something like 10,000 schools. Each of them have a union chapter. Each of those bodies bring about union dues. It's the cha-ching factor. There's no other entity that has that kind of power, and that's where power comes from, money. It was the dues. It's built into the process. For you to have a job, you must pay. A lot of things have happened since. There's been a Supreme Court ruling. Teachers have the right to basically leave, but we're hearing stories that when teachers do, they basically get blackballed. So the pressure's strong. So going back to the story, I thought, I'm going to just try this one little bill. We're just going to take 10 schools and say, could we identify the 10 lowest performing schools in California and turn them around? 10 out of 10,000. That day in committee, there was a line out the door of opposition. It was the brotherhood. It was the sisterhood. They were all lined up to come and oppose the little Romero bill that basically tried to say, can we do something better with 10 schools in California? And so I'm sitting there, and you think, never let them see you sweat. You have to keep a straight face. But then I heard, because they were in back of me, they were talking, and then I heard taking the mic, the representative from, drumroll, the Los Angeles County Lifeguards Association. And I had to turn around. First of all, I didn't know that there was a Lifeguards Association. And why would the Lifeguards Association be opposed to this bill? The message was, it's a brotherhood. It's a sisterhood. It's a machine. And sister, you are on the other side. It is the wall. You confront the machine. It is real, but it can be taken on. And I felt such gratitude when I saw, and I think it was brilliant of President Trump to invite the teams. They didn't endorse him, but you knew if you're there, and we saw the union vote that went to Trump overwhelmingly, that's about America first. It's about workers. That, to me, is what the union can be again if you get good leadership.
Exactly. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
We'll get the other stories. All right, some questions now from all of you. I have to say, I think that it is amazing to me just how dominant and powerful these unions are. I started companies in the UK and here in California. All of this stuff that we just accept here in California. Mrs. Thatcher swept all this away in the 1980s in the UK in pursuit of liberty. It's absolutely amazing. You come here, we have the worst business climate in America, in California. That's in California as well. We talk about that a lot. The worst business climate in America, in California, which is supposed to be the absolute home of innovation and energy and optimism and ambition. Absolutely crazy. So, where are we going to start?
Great. Well, we're going to have a little snowstorm of index cards come up here. But I want to say a couple things first. There are independents in this room. There are always Democrats and Republicans in this room, and there are declines to state in this room, and probably libertarians and Green Party and goodness knows what else. But I'll tell you what there is there's a real hunger for common sense, right? And so I want to get to something right away because it's the buzz in the room, it's the rumor, and it's the most obvious question, right? So let's just lay it on the table. There's a little rumor that the two of you might be interested in running for office. Would you care to comment?
Well, I'll take it first. So many of you have been very kind when we've met either this evening or on other occasions to say how much you loved watching The Next Revolution on Fox News. And I always say, let's make the next revolution the California Revolution. That's what we're going to do. But but you say very kindly, we miss it, and we miss seeing you. Well, the reason that I stopped doing the show was so that I could be on the road in California, and I have been for the last 2 years or so. I've been working very hard on understanding the issues facing our state, meeting people, setting up this organization, Golden Together. I am committed to this incredible place. As far as I'm concerned, there's nowhere better than California. I'll tell you a very quick story. In 2016, it was the year of Trump, but the big populist vote, I can't say populist without now thinking of Gloria, mocking my accent. Populist, I stopped saying it does sound a bit weird. There's a few words I've noticed, everyone's very tolerant of my accent, thank you very much for that, but I've noticed there are a few words that if you say them in English accent, it comes across a little hoity-toity, and you just got to go full American. One of them is water. I talk a lot about these days water policy for obvious reasons. I was in Congress last week testifying on the wildfires.
Do you want to comment about the spigot, Steve?
No, we'll do the spigot. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, the thing I wanted to say was we published at Golden Together one of our policy reports. You can see it on our website, goldentogether.com, a paper which I often talk about, and it's called Water Abundance, which is what we need and can have. Just as we can have energy abundance, abundant everything in California. Anyway, when I say water, I think it's a little hoity-toity water. Water! We need water in California. We're going to get the water we need. Anyway, the thing that preceded that sort of populist revolution that happened in 2016, the first real sign of that was actually the Brexit vote. You remember in the UK? And you may have heard me talk about this last time. And I went back to the UK to campaign for Brexit, in favour of Brexit, which didn't go down that well with my former boss and very close friend David Cameron, who was then the Prime Minister, campaigning to stay in the European Union. Anyway, after that, I flew back the night of the vote, actually. Actually, should I tell that quick story?
Please.
It was we booked an RV trip. Literally by coincidence, the day after the Brexit referendum, when we booked the RV and we're going up to the northern part of the state. So I had to get back. And so I was going to be up all night anyway. So they said, well, why don't you do the Brexit campaign? So you do the late night TV stuff. So I was on the BBC, probably funded by your tax dollars. I was on the BBC.
You're welcome.
Exactly, and with the host with the most impossibly English sounding name, the host for many years did all the election nights. He's called David Dimbleby. So it's true, David Dimbleby, and I was there with David, and on it was 3 a.m, something like that, and just as I was in mid sentence, he put his arm. I have to stop you there, Steve, because we have a result to declare. The BBC can announce that the Brexit referendum has been passed and Britain will be leaving the European Union, just as I was speaking. Now, the reason I tell that story is, were you anyone here watching Fox News on election night this year? Okay, so you may remember that I was on with Trace Gallagher from our studio in Los Angeles, mainly for the later part of the evening. But during the earlier part of election night, they went to us in LA, and we'd have a little round table, and I was mid-sentence. This, by the way, this was in the studio that I used to do my show from, so I know that studio very well. I know all the crew. There's Romeo, and Gloria's there, lovely guy Romeo, who's the floor manager. And I'm in mid-sentence, and he's holding up the sign that says wrap. I stop talking, and normally that means finish your thought. But he was agitating don't finish your thought, just stop. Because it went to New York, Fox News alert, Brett Baer. We can announce that Fox News projects that Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. Twice now, mid-sentence, when the results declared. I'm speaking, so any of you running for office, you want me on TV talking about it on election night. By the way, this is not a way of avoiding your question. I'm going to get to your question. The reason I bring all this up is because I was up election night for Brexit, next day on a flight back here. We land at San Francisco, at SFO. I remember this so clearly, this moment. Looking out the window, remember we'd been here 4 years. We moved here in 2012. We didn't know that we were going to be here forever. It was for family reasons. So my wife had a job here, wanted to keep, it was a lot for her to travel with 2 young children, so we were here. And it was 2016, so we'd been here 4 years at that point. And we landed, and I looked out the window of the plane, and I just remember thinking, it's so great to be home. And that's when I knew, this is it. This is my home. This is it. This is where I want to be. This is where I need to be. And I feel at home here in every way, not just because it's so beautiful and amazing, but spiritually, I feel, and that's why it's so important that we're here fighting for liberty, because that's what California is. Be who you want to be. Live how you want to live. Follow your dreams. That's California, the essence of America, the best of America. California means to America what America means to the world. I feel that so deeply, and I feel so strongly that these people who've been in charge don't get that and have run this state into the ground, but we can turn it around. So yes, I am committed to fighting for it. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use the phrase you may have heard me say elsewhere, and that's as far as I'm going to go tonight, which is yes, I am strongly considering running for governor of California in 2026. And I will leave it there for now.
And Gloria, would you like to respond to that question as well? Because there's a similar rumor about you.
Well, I've been very intrigued and motivated by Steve considering running. Every year since I left the legislature, people have always called me to say, Gloria, run for this, Gloria, run for that, blah, 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 blah. I never have. But I think there comes times, there comes moments, there become key moments where if you don't seize the day, it's gone. And I think the nation, we've seen it, I think California is right there, looking at just the vote in California. And that's what I get into. I say, we're not a red state or a blue state. I really believe we're a golden state because people, regardless of that initial after their name for a party that they join, it's about what kind of a platform, what kind of a belief in liberty and freedom and high taxes and everything else. What do people want? So I think we're on that moment as well. We've talked about what does California governance look like, and we know it's messed up. I don't think anybody can really explain, like the governor, lieutenant governor. Lieutenant governor, for example, I describe it as that's that spot where failed politicians go to wait to see if the top failed politician dies. That's what they wait to fail up. And they do nothing together. And so it's interesting, we've just been talking and thinking about, could there be a different model for California? I mean, you don't have to change the Constitution for people to act and to unite. So it's been fun thinking, and right now, honestly, it is just thinking, considering, looking at options, etc. We can make decisions at a later point. But I think it's an opportunity to seize the day in California and don't look back. It will happen. Yeah. The question is, are we motivated to make it happen?
And I would just, underline that by saying I'm honored that Gloria is considering, if you see what I mean. Because as you can see, Gloria's fantastic. And it's not just that she has the right ideas and values and beliefs, but she really knows what she's talking about. And she's been there in Sacramento, but she's not of Sacramento. She's exactly the kind of person that if someone were considering running for governor, they may want at their side someone who can really be a partner in shaking that place up and bringing about the change that we need.
I'm considering asking Gloria and Steve a few more questions. I'm seriously considering it. All right, I'm going to go a little more quickly because we have a lot of topics that people in this room are working very hard on and have passion about. One of them is the integrity of our elections. So, who's giggling? The question from the audience is, can we win with low voter integrity? How much voter integrity do we have in California, and what are your thoughts on it?
So I'll start and then just weigh in. I mean, look, I've got a simple way of looking at this, which is we have to win with the system that we have. There's no other choice. Now, I agree with the critics who've pointed out, and I've been one of them, I just cannot believe, like every single year they seem to make our voting system more messed up, and most of it for partisan reasons. So the endless fiddling around with the elections. I don't understand why we can't do certainly what happened in the UK. I mean, that night I was on TV in Brexit, they'd counted all the votes. That's what they got the result. It wasn't a projection, it was the actual result. So I don't,
imagine that.
I know. So I don't, like most other places in the world.
May I ask you
so as far as I'm
question,
concerned,
Steve?
why,
Does in Britain does addition, when you're counting things, does that include subtraction? Because over here we have we're counting and then all of a sudden we have subtraction, and it's very confusing.
So I think that, I don't understand why you can't do it like most other places in the world. Vote on one day, count on one day, get the results on one day. How about that for a radical idea? So there's all these things, of course, ballot harvesting. My goodness, when they first told me about ballot harvesting, I remember I did a thing on it on my Fox News show. I thought it was a joke. I truly thought it was a joke. I thought this can't be serious. It can't be real. They wouldn't have given it such a corrupt sounding name, ballot harvesting. Like, are you kidding? And of course it's real, and of course it started here in California, now it's spread, and Nancy Pelosi wanted to make it across the country in that bill that they had HR 1 years ago, etc. So that's got to go. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing, where you can go around, it's supposed to be one person, one vote, not one union activist, 7,000 votes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. All of this stuff has to go. And I think that there's another thing which I don't want to spend too much time so we can get to other questions. Let's not forget the gerrymandering that goes on. Even in a bad year for Republicans get 40% of the vote in California statewide. No one even gets, in a bad year, the average Republican vote share in the last since the last time Republicans won statewide is 41.8% for statewide elections. Do Republicans have 40% of the seats in the legislature? No, not 40, not 35, not 30. Right now it's 25%. That is a direct result of gerrymandering, so we mustn't forget that either. If we had fair representation as well as fair votes, there wouldn't be a Democrat supermajority that could jam through all this far left stuff. So we've got to deal with that as well. So yes, we need voter ID. There is going to be a ballot initiative in 2026. That's going to be really important, but it's not just voter ID. There's a whole set of reforms that we need. But the final point I want to make, there's actually two. One, we could complain about all of this as much as we like, but there's a truth. The only vote that we can guarantee will not be counted is the one that isn't cast. So there's no shortcut or substitute for just going out there, registering voters, chasing them, hassling them, getting them to turn out. We know how to do it because it just happened for President Trump in the swing states. My friend Charlie Kirk was a huge player in that, Scott Pressler. There's real expertise now in getting the vote out, and that's what we need to bring here for 2026. And then the final point, when people say it's impossible for Republicans to win, statewide in California, think about the numbers, not so much the percentage, but the numbers of votes. 2026 will be a midterm election. That means usually a lower share of the vote, quite a lot lower in some years. If you take the average of the last two midterms, 2022, 2018, and then use it to project the number of votes that will be cast in California in 2026, the number you get to is 11.7 million. To win with a small majority, 51%, here's the target number of votes for a Republican to win, 5.9 million votes. Donald Trump just got 6.1 million votes in California. The votes are there. The Republican votes are there. We need to just go out and fight for them and get them to turn out. It is absolutely possible to win in 2026. We are the ones, though, that have to go and make it happen.
And let me just add one thing. This was amazing, but I don't know if you're aware that it was just yesterday that California finished counting votes from the November election. Yesterday.
What a relief.
I mean, we're 3 weeks into winning nationally. California just signed off. Again, I felt that was from the Babylon Bee. I had to read it over and over. President Trump actually tweeted that out. Second, what Steve said is so true. It doesn't matter what I want. You play by the rules that you have. And kind of like, don't complain about it. Here's the rule book. Follow the rules. I may not like them, but these rules have usually worked for the ones who have written the rules. And this last election, again, I'll go back to the Trump campaign for this, the 24 campaign, was really brilliant because rather than complaining about early voting, hello, if you've got 30 days to vote rather than 1 day, vote on those 30 days. Don't complain about it. So I'm very much one, and again, having served in Sacramento, majority leader, I've worked on all kinds of campaigns. It's you play by the rules, and if you are so fortunate to be voted in and have a majority, you can then begin to change the rules. Voter ID, absolutely. And I think when you talk about voter ID, you should quote Congresswoman Maxine Waters at the Department of Education asking the security guard to show his ID. And a shout out to our security guards tonight. They are American heroes.
Oh, that is great.
Brilliant point.
She did. She's a
Brilliant point.
gem, isn't she?
See, she's good, right?
She's good.
Brilliant.
She's been. Yeah.
That is I love that point. I can't wait to say that on Fox.
I'm still reeling from 3 weeks. I can't. Anyway, so Gloria, why don't you keep the ball rolling here because I want to ask a couple of questions from the audience specifically about schools. What happens to low-performing schools of choice? Like, is there any movement when they're low-performing? And also, and then we can come back to both of you answering this. Do you guys agree with kind of nixing the Department of Education? Would that be good for California?
I do believe in abolishing the Department of Education. And there's a number of reasons for it. It's bureaucracy, et cetera. But remember, the Department of Education, it doesn't educate students. It really is sort of a broker. It's a middleman. And basically what it does is it takes funds and it redistributes them back to the state of California. The biggest benefactors, I believe, if there is to be an abolition of the Department of Education in California, are really for families and children with special education needs. This is what I find overall. And again, too, I think there are real challenges in educating our special ed children, but our special ed children are valuable. They are entitled by law to a free, accessible public education. The biggest complaint I hear from status quo interests in California that, oh, well, we would do better except for, and then they point the finger at special ed kids. I believe that with the abolition of the Department of Education, the funds are returned to the state. The state then has to confront the parents directly. The state bureaucrats can no longer say, oh, it's Washington. They didn't give us the money. No. The money comes to California. That's when you look into your budgets and you look to see, and they're all values and choices that are made in budgeting. And that's where California officials can no longer hide behind Washington bureaucrats that parents can never find to say they shortchanged us. These are choices that California politicians and the governors are making. So I think it gives an extra layer of transparency. On school choice, I strongly believe in any type of school choice. I was one of those Democrats that believed in vouchers, opportunity scholarships, whatever you want to call it. Homeschooling, magnet schools. Districts have very creative ways of doing things too. Charter schools. But I am also one of those persons who believes that just because it's a charter school doesn't mean it's doing any better. And so that's where, again, too, it's up to, having transparency, showing. I believe in testing. I mean, show me that. And testing isn't the whole story, but think about it. When you walk into your doctor's office, first thing they do, blood pressure. They have you step on I used to go to Weight Watchers. You got to step on the scale. You can't hide it. It's right there. And I got to own up to, did I eat too much this past week or not? So, it's your dashboard. And you got to look at it. It gives you a little bit about how am I doing. That's all that it really is. But it's a powerful point in time that tells me how I'm doing. And so I think it's important to support choice. Let parents decide what glove fits their child's needs best. And when we do that, we can all happily get along and I think thrive. And if they're bad schools, turn them around, shut them down, including charter schools.
Can I just speak to the department? Brilliantly put, Gloria. I just want to take it a bit broader. Why stop at the Department of Education, right? Because many of you may have seen me talk about this. I mean, we hear a lot about, when we talk about the Bill of Rights, often we talk about the First Amendment, Second Amendment, rightly. So, the one that I am obsessed with is the 10th Amendment. I'll quote it. Not the first bit. The first bit, basically, the powers that are not specifically listed in the Constitution, and I'm quoting now, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. If it's not in the Constitution, the default assumption is that it's run by the states, not the federal government. So I think there's huge swaths of the federal government that have no business interfering in what goes on at the state level. Housing and urban development, why? It's insane to me. There's huge, this is the problem, and we're seeing it with DOGE, thank goodness. The centralization of power is always a disaster. I believe in decentralizing power. It's probably the single idea that is most consistent of a theme in everything I've done. My political work, my policy work, the businesses I've started, the books I've written. I wrote a book in 2015, More Human, Designing a World Where People Come First. The whole theme was that everything has become too big and bureaucratic and centralized and distant from the human scale. We need to put power in people's hands. And so I think we need to go on a rampage throughout the federal government, not just education. Most of it, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be shut down and the power returned to the states, as the Constitution says in the 10th Amendment.
I'm starting to hear the word Doge so much, and now I hear it as a verb. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, like, instead of saying I'm going to get a colostomy, it's going to be, I'm going to getting my intestines Doge tomorrow. I mean, we are going to get transparency and accountability in our government, one way or another, right? Gloria, I know that you were evacuated from your home during the fires, so I'd like to hear from both of you. There are some questions about the fires here, and I'll put it all out, and then you guys can jump in where you want. One of them is, how do both of you feel about the leader or the people that have been designated to rebuild the Palisades area? And also, what is the proper role for the EPA in all of that? And could you just give us a little sense of what it was like to go through that?
Thankfully, and thank God for our firefighters, for our law enforcement that assisted us, many community volunteers who really just were valiant in their fighting back against these horrific fires. I live in a little area of Malibu, and my home was saved. Okay, the Pepperdine, that was called the Franklin Fire, is not very far away from me. It all comes down to which way the winds blow. I mean, literally. And the winds, thankfully for me, not so much for some of my neighbors, blew the other way. My little condo was saved. However, there was no power, no electricity, no heat, no water, no phone. But I was one of the lucky ones. And sometimes when I was grumbling about, oh, I don't have power, I thought, you know what? I am one of the lucky ones. The Pacific Coast Highway is still shut down. And this week it's shut down again because of the rain coming down. There's the fear of landslide, mudslide. So the trauma is not over. The Palisades are right there, just probably about 12 miles from my home. Devastated, burned out. But I want to acknowledge as well, too, that on the east side of the county, the Eaton fire, there's very little attention to that. And again, too, I don't want to go into an issue of wealth, et cetera, blah, 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 but there is that discussion going on in LA County. There's a lot of attention to the Palisades. It is a very affluent community. They were devastated. Homes are built, burned down. But also in LA County, where it took 6 hours for the alert to go out to the people living in Altadena and East Pasadena, 6 hours to evacuate. It's absolute madness. In LA, Karen Bass, the mayor, was partying in Ghana. Like, what was she doing there? The reservoir was empty, the water hydrants. And my daughter, she writes for City Journal, at one point, she had exposed this in 2021 when one of the commercial buildings on Venice Beach had burned down, and it turned out it was an empty hydrant right there. So we've known about this. Machines were, the trucks were unprepared, et cetera. We could go on and on. Bottom line, bad leadership. Bad, where is the leadership? And again, too, I give every thanks to the firefighters under incredulous jobs. The law enforcement, I know LAPD has been stationed day and night. Officers are sleeping in their cars to assist people to make sure there's not the looting, et cetera. If you see somebody, who's in uniform, just thank them. The paramedics, et cetera, it's been incredible. What does it mean overall going forward? People were outraged when they learned that Steve Soberoff was going to come in and lead up the recovery, and then it was discovered that he was going to get $500,000 for a few weeks' worth. People were outraged, and so anger and outrage works. Like, wait a minute, what is this? That's charity that could have gone for families, etc. So he withdrew. Then it turned out, however, that a couple of assistants were going to say, okay, well, now they were only going to get $250,000. The people are not happy. Bottom line is, it's a disaster. There is no leadership. Thankfully, President Trump sent our friend, I call him Captain America, Rick Grinnell, to lead up, the effort. But one thing that I'll say, and then Steve, I want you to further, because I know you've been really working on this. There's so much on California policy and how we manage fires overall, but I think that's really important is to understand that this bill, this special session that Governor Newsom did to Trump-proof California and to put $50 million, not for fire recovery in any way or fire prevention, every one of us should be outraged, and every one of us should contact your elected official. How dare you do that special session, that legislation? Strings matter. I'm from California, but you know what? I don't want the federal government to send a whole bunch of money, because it's just going to go further into a sinkhole and float off into a polluted Pacific Ocean. We want all strings are is basically accountability, responsibility. That's not here right now. Steve, I know you have a lot of thoughts on policy.
I'll be quite quick though, so we can get to some others. And here's a simple way of doing it. I just taped today a great episode of my podcast, The Steve. By the way, who listens to the Steve Hilton Show every week? The podcast? Nah, not enough. You say you're fans. Not enough of you. I want every hand going up next time I'm back here. Steve Hilton Show podcast, once new episode every week. just taped it today, all about the fires with my friend Jennifer Horn, radio host in Los Angeles. She's all over this story, along with Joel Pollack from Breitbart. Really good discussion about all of this. So listen to that when it's out in the next couple of days. Steve Hilton Show. A couple of things I just want to say. I was in Congress last week testifying to a committee that was called, the title of the hearing was Over-Regulation and the California Fires. That was the theme. And that's true. And I didn't make many friends on the Democrat side. I enjoyed my tangles with Jerry Nadler. By the way, Jerry Nadler, it is hilarious, but it's like my little story. When you actually go there, you've heard about these things, about how ridiculous these hearings are. When you actually see it in real life, you just can't quite believe it. They literally do just sit there, kind of half asleep, and they bring him this ridiculous sort of statement, that these questions that he just reads out, if he's just seen it for the first time. Absolutely hilarious. Anyway, so it was fun just being in the hearing, but to be honest, I let them have it because they needed to hear directly, because exactly as Gloria said, there's not just fear and anxiety and grief in Los Angeles, there is real fury and rage at what happened. And there's no sense in which people want you to hold back. No, they are furious at what happened. And I was channeling that and taking that directly to them in Congress. And I said very clearly, if you look at the policy failures that led up to this, of course it's true that fires happen. Fires have happened forever. And in those exact hills that burned. But what also used to happen was brush clearance and controlled burns and managing it so that they don't burn out of control. And then once they are out of control, there really isn't anything you can do. And it is dependent just on luck and the wind. But you don't need to let them get to that stage. It's bad policies, over-regulation specifically. I'll just give you a couple of examples. In the year 2000, CARB, the California Air Resources Board, new smoke guidelines basically stopping controlled burns in those hills. The Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, as part of the state government, stopping people, fining people who tried to clear the brush around their own homes. The Coastal Commission, stopping work to replace old wooden power lines to make them more fire resistant with metal ones. They stopped it to preserve the Braunton milk vetch, I believe it is called, this endangered species. I mean, on and on. So I said to them, people talk about these fires as a natural disaster. No, it is not a natural disaster. It is a man-made disaster, specifically a Democrat-made disaster, because there is no one else to blame. No one else to blame. They've been in charge at every level. And then the final point I'd make, you can see that if you look at my social media, we put the clips out. I did enjoy myself, I have to say. And there's this ridiculous member of Congress she was obsessed with the DEI thing. And they do those ridiculous sort of pantomime sort of yes or no, please, when they ask about yes or no. Like Ted Lewis said, are you a firefighter? He went through the witness. Are you a firefighter? Yes or no? Are you a firefighter? As if to try and discredit what we're about to say because we're not firefighters. He got to me, I said, are you a firefighter? I mean, what is this? This is ridiculous. Anyway, this other woman, I think she's from Vermont.
You sure she was the woman? Did she say?
Well, this other, she said, her yes or no, please, was, what do you think the fires would happen because the fire chief is a lesbian? That was her question. No. And then they just went on and on about DI, and then it just occurred to me after, by the way, yes, actually, this fire disaster was caused by DEI, Democrat extremism and incompetence. That's what caused the fires. And by the way, that is the story of pretty much everything that's gone wrong in California. It's either the ideological extremism, these insane climate policies and all the other extremism we've experienced, so that it's deliberate, it's not an accident, it's not incompetence. By the way, I often say, thank goodness in many ways that they are so incompetent. Their ideas are so bad. Imagine if they were competent at implementing all this. It'd be even worse. So you've either got the extremism, or as we saw in relation to Los Angeles and the management there, incompetence, DEI, Democrat extremism and incompetence. It's an all-purpose explanation for anything that's going wrong in California.
Wow, that's a memorable one, Steve. Thank you. Listen, I want to say really plainly, the Liberty Forum is a nonpartisan group. So if there's a Democrat if there's a Democrat considering running for the governor of California, we would welcome them on stage. And Steve, I would invite you back here to debate them.
Yes,
And I think it would be a lot of
debate.
fun. Maybe
Bring it on.
I mean, a lot of people on one team tend to fail up, get a TV show or something. And we hear rumors that Kamala might be, so she is welcome as any Democrat who wants to talk about transparency and accountability in California. All right, well, we're gonna focus real quick here. So it used to be, as goes California, so goes the country. All these cool things were invented here or started here, fads and, everything, technology and jogging and all kinds of things. Jogging, it really became popular in California. I know it seems crazy, but it was true. Is it imaginable that as goes the country, in terms of the country's hunger for transparency and accountability, so will go California?
Well, I think in many ways it already has. And I think it has the good and the bad. I mean, Ronald Reagan. And so I think we have to take a moment to celebrate the good things, because I do believe that people look at California as a land of opportunity and promise. It is a golden state. It's just that it's become really very rusty. And we haven't, and again, too, if we don't take that, shine to it, it's going to stay that way. There are many good ideas that we have exported and sent out. There are also some pretty bad ones as well. But I will fall on the side of saying that as goes California, so goes the nation. There's much to be proud of. We can take a look at agriculture, the Central Valley, the breadbasket still. And that's why water is so important, to make sure that we continue to really feed the farmers who feed the basket that feeds the world. I decided not to fly when I came up here. I decided to drive. Why go through the hassle of going through TSA and everything? And it just adds an extra maybe hour and a half. But I like the idea of really just driving, because you really get to go through towns, sometimes pull over, stop, eat at the cafe, talk to people. And I think that one of the good things as people consider running for office, the best thing about actually running for office is it actually gives you a calling card to just talk to people. And people will talk about their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations, the loss, the grief. And you know what? I don't think I've ever met anybody who has just said, forget it. It's gone. It's over. I mean, look at this room. There's quite an age span in this room. And you probably would not be here tonight if you didn't think, I was inspired by somebody before me, and I'm here to do my part to do something for my children or my grandchildren. In the reception, I heard some folks talking, they were talking to me about looking at what they wanted for their grandchildren. So I think that is a California dream. I think it's real. I think we market it, we expand it. We deal with the bad part, but we do not let California get defined by that. We have become unburdened by what has been.
I absolutely agree. Look, I totally agree. I feel more sure than almost any. I've just got this. I know we can do this. It's too important. As I said earlier, California means so much, not just to us here, but to the whole country and to the world. What we represent is too important. It's not gonna happen. We're not gonna let them destroy this. We are going to save California. We're going to do it. It's going to happen. I feel the energy when I'm on the road. I mean, it's true that for so long now, it's been all this bad stuff we're exporting. I mean, there's a line in Califalia, which, is particularly given my focus on the origin of the pandemic and my work on that Fox and Fauci and all of the rest of it. I sometimes say that under the one-party rule, California's become the Wuhan lab of far-left extremism. They've been cooking up this virus that has been sent out and infected the rest of the country, even the world. All the bad stuff, the Green New Deal, all these things, all started here. The race extremism, the gender extremism, all of it here. But we're going to turn it around. We are. We're going to have the Cali future that we deserve. And I'm on the road the whole time, and it is amazing. I mean, I was in last week in Washington. Before that, Fresno on Monday. What day is it? Tuesday? Is it Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Yesterday I was in Orange County. I was in the Mojave Desert, Bakersfield. You know, it's an amazing state. People are doing amazing things. Just imagine how great we would be, how magnificent things would be if we just got the government out of the way of this insane, bossy, ridiculous, micromanaging government telling you, you know, what car to drive and how to cook your food and where you can live, what kind of house you can have, how to run your business, how to raise your child. No, that's not California. That is anti-California. Californians feel that. Thank you, Alex. Yes, exactly. There's this incredible desire for change. I feel it everywhere. I talk to people everywhere. I drive around, like exactly as you say. It's so uplifting. This is the best place in the world. There is nowhere better than California. We are going to set California free. We're going to restore the California dream. I know that people want it. I'm very, very sure we're going to make it happen.
All right. So on that note, we always ask our speakers, I mean, you're looking at 325, 350 people here. What do you hope, if you would each really briefly just say specifically, what do you hope that they will do tomorrow morning when they wake up? Besides buy your great book, do pre-order Steve's book. I know it's going to be good.
Okay, well, okay, I've got a long list. So you can buy them to pre-order Califalia, follow the Steve Hilton Show, listen every week. Go to goldentogether.com and sign up for our email so that you can support our policy work. And I do agree with Dave Johnson, who's now, again, not listening to me anymore. But, you know, join the party. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless we work for it, right? We are the people that are going to make the California revolution happen. We've got to do, just going out there, every single vote. We've seen how important it is, right? Going out there. If you register someone to vote that's someone that you know, you're in the coffee shop, or you're talking at the school, wherever, sports things, social occasions, and they're complaining, and you kind of get a sense that they agree with you, and they see the need for change. You say, oh, interesting. Are you involved in that? Are you involved in the local party? No, okay. Why don't you come along? Come with me to something. That's the way we do it. We've got to organize. We really, really do. So I do ask you to follow up on the kind invitation to join the party locally. That's a really, really productive thing that we can all do.
And I say ditto to all that, but one thing especially, as Alex pointed out, call those senators. We want a yes vote on Bobby Kennedy, on Tulsi Gabbard, and on Kash Patel. America has sent a mandate message, and I think if you do nothing else, but after you order, of course, on Amazon.com, the pre-order, I would ask you to do that. Because remember when, Steve, you talked about it before, the vote that is the most important when we take a look at election outcomes is the vote that never made it into the ballot box. If we do not pick up the vote and just think, well, somebody else will call, we're doing what we have always done when we just suffered defeat after defeat, because the numbers of people are there. We just have to reach out to them. So I think call your senators. And then again, too, I think I would urge, take a chance on somebody. Take a chance on somebody who has a different, initial behind their name. If it's an R, a D, a non, decline to state, whatever it may be. Maybe just talk to the person. Maybe there's some argument. Put some rules maybe to say, okay, we're not going to gouge each other's eyes out. But conversations begin with the first hello. You've got to start talking. And I think we will find that there are many areas where we don't agree. But I'll bet on the basic issues of liberty and freedom and independence, our children, our pets, I got to give a shout out to my little tubby out there. I think we'll find that we are American and we just approach being Americans in different ways. So I think just a couple of things like that. And again, just give gratitude in whatever form that you can. Those are important things, but start by calling your senators to say, vote for Bobby.
We've recently seen together in the horrific California fires, we've recently seen that all we take for granted can easily go up in smoke. And just as houses can disappear, freedom can disappear. Freedom is also vulnerable. So unless we have the proper protections to put out the flames of tyranny, communism, and corruption, we will not prosper. And tonight, we have real ideas and real enthusiasm, real energy and passion. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Steve, for bringing that to me.
Thank you for watching our presentation. Please like and subscribe to our channel to get updates on new speakers, and consider joining the Liberty Forum of Silicon Valley. You can do so at our website. If you don't want to join, but want to support the principles of American liberty, you can make a tax-deductible donation via our website. The links are in the description. Thank you again, and stay free.